Okay, let's get started. So today, basically, Jon Jones responds to basically Dana White, responds to some of the stuff he said, and basically ask for him to essentially be released, so to speak. So let's go ahead and take a look at, first of all, Jon Jones' tweet, and then we're going to go into a little bit more about some of the upcoming news and some of the stuff that happened over the weekend. There's been a lot that's going on. I wasn't going to put out a video today, honestly, and then I thought, you know what, might as well do it. So I'm going to go ahead and share all this stuff, and then we're going to go into it, and then we're going to go into Jon Jones's his tweet, based off of what he said about the UFC and all of that stuff as well. So let's go ahead and quickly take a look. All right. So I haven't actually read this for the first time. I'm reading this. So he says, "Hey, everyone. I wanted to address Dana White's comments from this past weekend because the truth of the matter is, to me and the fans, which he thinks we care, funny enough, Dana, you were heated about why I'm not at the White House on the White House card. But let's clear something up. My team and I were actually negotiating with the UFC for that fight. Real negotiations. I even came down from my original number, and what was I offered in return? I was lowballed. Yes, I have arthritis in my hip and it's painful, but that doesn't mean I can't fight. So let's get me this straight. Let's get me this straight. Okay. If I had accepted this lowball offer, suddenly my hip would be fine and I'd be done on the White House card. That doesn't make sense. Sorry, I'm reading terribly here, but I even received stem cell treatment last week to get ready for the White House card, and training camp was scheduled to start today. I was preparing to be ready. I understand business deals fall through sometimes, but going out publicly and saying things that aren't true isn't right. Okay, well, how does he have the moral superiority here? Moral superiority here? But okay, sure. After everything I've given to the UFC the years, the title defenses, the fights, hearing that I'm done is disappointing, especially when, as recently as Friday, UFC was calling me to try and get me on the White House card for a much lower number. If the UFC truly feels that like I'm done, then I respectfully ask to be released from my contract today. No more spins, no more games. Thank you to the real fans who know what's up. Bones out. I wonder if he feels really cool when he says that. So before we even get into it, I'm just gonna go ahead and play what Dana said first at the UFC 326 press conference. So let's go into that. So Dana White press conference, post-fight press conference, to get into it. All right. So here's where Dana White talks about Jon Jones on the first night, and then Jon Jones obviously had a fit. I'm sure all of you have heard about that so far, but let's check it out.
There is speculation, of course, that it's Jon Jones.
No, it's not.
Was Jon
Never, ever, ever, which I told you guys 100,000 times, was Jon Jones even remotely in my mind to fight at the White House. I wouldn't. First of all, I've told you why I wouldn't do it. And number two, some guy with meta glasses on filmed him talking about his hips, that his hips are so bad. And I don't know if you guys saw that flag football game where he can barely run. Jon Jones he retired because of his hips. He's got arthritis in his hips. Apparently he's been, doctors say he should have hip replacement. So
okay.
Add that on top of all the other reasons that I wouldn't. The Jon Jones thing is bullshit. Okay. I'm not saying they weren't talking to Jon Jones and that Jon Jones wasn't interested in the fight. And what was even crazier is Jon Jones came out and was like, I'm in negotiations right now for the White House fight, after I had already sent a text to his lawyer saying, never going to happen ever.
So that's funny because Jon Jones obviously put that tweet storm out saying, hey, I'm disappointed. I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with it at this time, but he was basically saying, I'm disappointed, blah, 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 and essentially saying that Dana's lying. When Dana said that, it wasn't like we were in negotiations with Jon, but he's just not on the White House card.
Is it fair to say then Jon Jones is retired and this is the end of his time?
Yes.
Okay.
Very fair.
For the White House card, have you decided yet? Is it still in the works? How much is Paramount Plus? If there's CBS portions, what are we looking?
So he said, yeah, basically Jon Jones is retired. So let's go into the next clip. And this one is going to be basically all around the Zuffa boxing just last night that happened, where Jai Patel won his Zuffa belt. All right, let's go into it.
Ready.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Dana, front
Yep.
right here. Other side right here.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw, but this morning, Jon Jones went on a bit of a Twitter tirade, and then he ended up deleting them. Have you seen his comments?
No.
Or he basically very heavily pushed back on you, saying that there were no negotiations. And then
I never said there were no negotiations. I never said that. I said, were they talking to Jon Jones? They talked to everybody.
So that's true. He did say that. We just saw that in the first video. He did say that they were talking, but they weren't able to come to terms, essentially.
Everybody was talked to. Not one word of what I said was not true about the whole Jon Jones thing. And how many times have I sat up here and said, he's not fighting at the White House? No. And have you guys not all seen the video of the dude with the meta glasses on when he didn't know he was being filmed, telling them that his hips are fucking shot and he needs hip replacement? Did you not see the videos of him running on the flag football game? And what did I say that wasn't true? It was all true. And you guys all bust my balls about how much I love Jon Jones. And John's the greatest of all time. No way in hell Jon Jones is going to be booked for the White House card. Wasn't going to happen. But the matchmakers were out talking to everybody, seeing what was possible, and they brought me every possible fight that could be made.
Dana, just going off that to your right, and the White House card, there's a lot of reporting out of Spain today saying that it was going to be Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev, and that fight fell apart
That's
on Friday.
True.
So apparently, according to Malkikawa, who was on Attic and Florian's podcast earlier today, this morning at 11 a.m., was saying that that is true, and they are going to try and do that fight. They were basically trying to do that fight, essentially, and then it didn't go through. Apparently, Islam Makhachev has a hand injury. Now, funny enough, let's go ahead and just quickly look at some of the stuff that people are writing in Jon Jones's tweet here. So this guy, I thought it was pretty interesting what he wrote. It wasn't just a hip. It wasn't just the negotiations about money. It wasn't just holding up the heavyweight division and then ducking Tom after UFC agreed to your terms. Not to mention he extended the entire, he had an injury, which is obviously not his fault, but he had the injury and he was supposed to fight Stipe before, which is why, Tom Aspinall became the interim heavyweight champion. And then he didn't even want to fight him, to the point where he said, I want fuck you money to basically fight Jon Jones to fight the annoying Tom Aspinall, and he called him annoying. Okay. He said it wasn't the constant legal troubles, drugs, or PEDs. It's an accumulation of 15 years of fuck assery, and now you're upset that UFC finally pulled the rug out from under you. Go retire in obscurity. You've alienated yourself from the entire fan base. Now, personally, I feel like this is true. I'm not a Jon Jones fan. Apparently, Wyatt at the Fight Society is not a Jon Jones fan. So, I don't know who is really. Let's go into a little more. You decide to be a pussy. Duck Tom, good riddance. You deserve nothing less. Fake goat. Sincerely, the UFC fan base. That's funny. Okay, seeing you get what you deserved feels so good, not gonna lie. Seems like he just can't get you to trust anyone. Then there's this video of basically Dana White saying, I can't trust him. Let's actually watch this. Let's see what he has to say.
Jon Jones called us last night and retired. Jon Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC. Jon Jones.
That was a crazy way to announce Tom Aspinall's championship reign. Real fans hate you. You're a disgrace to the sport, and I hope we don't see you again. Rico out. If you wish you were on the card. Okay. Dana White, Jon Jones destroyed his opponents while he was on coke. You think a little arthritis is going to stop him? We want to see Jon Jones fighting in the White House. Okay, I don't know anybody who actually agrees with that lady. Jones. By the way, I am doing another podcast with Mo and Colin on the weekend at 1:30. I'm going to see if I can go live actually for you guys, because I've been trying to do the live thing for a while. It just hasn't worked out, and I use this app to go create the videos and stuff like that. And I've been trying to use that and see if I can go ahead, and it says, I have to, well, I don't know. It's kind of odd, to be honest with you, but I think I just have to upgrade if I'm not mistaken. So anyways, Jones responding publicly to Dana, said it through the media, is the most Jon Jones thing possible. The GOAT conversation is settled, but the business side of the sport is still a mess. UFC needs Jones more than Jones needs the UFC, and everyone knows it. The funny thing is, the GOAT thing is not really, don't get me wrong. I'm aware Jon Jones is like a massive, incredible fighter in terms of the beginning of his career. But really, like for the last, and Jed Meshew even talked about this, but the last 5 to 6 years, what has he actually done in his heavyweight career? He fought Ciryl Gane for the heavyweight title after he ducked basically Francis Ngannou, and then he fights Ciryl Gane, does the gets a guillotine basically, like a minute in or a minute and a half in, wins the fight, then waits out a year. And I mean, I don't know if he waited out a year or two, but he waits out for a while. Then finally gets the fight with Stipe, and then goes ahead, who was also just lost to Francis Ngannou, and who also didn't fight for like the last like half a decade. And then he goes to he gets injured and then basically goes to wait for the following year to fight Stipe. In the meantime, Tom Aspinall is, sitting here being the interim heavyweight champion, who he basically won against Pavlovich. So really, it's just kind of odd the way like Jon Jones thinks that this is supposed to be working. So here, let's go. We could have had Jon Jones versus Pereira, Conor versus Chandler on the same card. It would have been the biggest and most unique fight card ever. Perfect for a little White House event. But Dana, nah, I'm not spending all that money, and instead went and gave Conor Ben $15 million. Well, technically that's Turkey Al Sheikh's money. Also, second of all, Ronda Rousey basically said it really, really well. And I can't seem to find the interview, but I think she had an interview with Jim Rohn, and she talks about basically how the UFC is basically made to, I'm sorry, I keep saying basically, but the UFC is basically there to go ahead and, appease the shareholders and make big profits for them. Ironically, I do feel like this is very short-sighted, the UFC. I've never, in all my like years of being a fan of the UFC, I've never felt this discouraged by the first quarter of the year, thinking like, what the fuck is going on? And where are the good fights coming? Okay, this is who you're dealing with. That's a funny meme. John, a big fan, but you said fighting for your country at the White House was something deeper to fight for that goes beyond paychecks or belts. Now you needed a number. That's kind of true. It's basically being hypocritical. Oh no, consequences of my actions. I will retire Jon Jones without even fighting him, Tom Aspinall. That's actually true. You did say that. We stand with you, John. Dana needs to do better. All right, Chicken King. Exception, complaining about being lowballed by Dana and his new bosses after numerous last-minute cancellations. What you call lowballing is called risk management in their world. You also lost leverage by relinquishing the belt. You can't impose terms and conditions from a weak position. Yeah, that's so true. Stop embarrassing MMA, bro. Just go. This one says I'm all for fighter pay, but if it's true you were offered $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall and declined that after months of Dana White promising the fight was going to happen, and making the UFC looking like clowns over that situation, you are crazy if you think getting the same $30 million or near that to fight Alex. What did you expect? Dana is completely wrong too, because all he knows how to do nowadays is bullshit to the media. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about that 30 million. Let's go ahead and see essentially what Ariel Helwani had to talk about or had to share, basically. Let's go ahead and watch that down.
Without getting too into the numbers, Jon Jones wanted something similar to what he was offered last year to fight Tom Aspinall.
Okay. The UFC had a big hype built around Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. And then Jon Jones is the one that decides not to fight and to retire and relinquish the belt. And he was even on that podcast with the Nelk Boys, and they asked him the question, and he got pissed off and he just left. He didn't get pissed off, but he just kind of like, he felt like triggered, I guess, and disrespected, and then he just left. Whatever you want to call it. He just felt some type of way about it and was not very happy about it. So then he just fucks off of the podcast and then goes to relinquish his belt, basically, like a day later. So, okay, let's go to the next one.
They were more comfortable with something similar to what they gave Conor Ben very recently. I know not their money, but like I'm talking the numbers here. And that was the impasse. And so when Jon Jones said about 10 or so days ago, I'm negotiating with the UFC, he was being honest. They weren't just talking to themselves. His team wasn't talking to a wall. He was talking to people who are authorized to make fights in the UFC. Now, perhaps if you want to get into the semantics, okay, we make a fight, we come to an agreement, and then we bring it to the boss man and he decides. That's what he told us, right? They were making fights, they were throwing out bait, and then they brought it to me to pick and choose who's going to be on the card. They 100% spoke to him and his team about fighting on this card. They couldn't come to terms.
Yeah, because bro, you literally fucked the UFC after the entire fan base was so excited. We were clamoring for Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. Honestly, I think that would have been an incredible fight had it happened. And I even think till today this would be an incredible fight. But now you have all this bullshit happening with Tom Aspinall and the eye pokes from Ciryl Gane. And the memes are quite funny, to be honest with you, with Alex Pereira wearing the goggles. So the thing is, it's just so frustrating to watch this whole thing happen and come down. And then, I mean, what the fuck was that video with Jon Jones in the fucking hotel room? Probably just, excuse my language, but fuck some dude or something. And then he's taking a video being like, I'm so upset. Like, bro, why the fuck are you making that video? Just don't make that video. That's fucking weird. Okay, anyways, let's go on.
That's 100% a fact. And Dana White has said on Saturday, and he said on Sunday, we absolutely did not talk to him. I didn't want him on. That's not true. There were people in the company who are very much in positions of power, who are very much authorized to negotiate, not just talk, negotiate, and they could not come.
I think he's just referring to Hunter Campbell, who's trying to negotiate on behalf of Dana White for the UFC with Jon Jones' team to basically give him the fight.
To even the vicinity of where they both felt comfortable with the deal. And so once they came to that conclusion that they hit a massive roadblock, Ciryl Gane was called to fight Alex Pereira. We knew when Alex Pereira vacated that title that he was fighting, as I said, on the Monday after. He's either fighting, or I actually said it on the morning that I made that video, and then again on the Monday after. He's either fighting Jon Jones or he's fighting Ciryl Gane for the interim title. They didn't strip Tom. That was the right thing to do. I don't have an issue with the interim belt. They just did an interim title for the lightweight title, 6, 7, 8 months, which is when the title fight would have last been in October. This will be 8 months later. I'm fine with that. And if anything, it only makes the Tom Aspinall return bigger. Perfect world, you do Aspinall versus Gane in London in March, but Aspinall has had multiple surgeries now. Now, Eddie Hearn's saying it's been 3. When Pizzi was there, it was the double surgery. Apparently, there's been one more. We're going to get clarification on that. Now you've got Alex Pereira in the mix. If Alex Pereira beats Ciryl Gane, Alex, as interim champion, who just won a belt in a 3rd different weight class, interim or not, going up against Tom is a much bigger fight than Tom versus Ciryl, even with the controversy, because by the time this fight happens, that controversy will feel like 10 years ago in the world of MMA.
I don't know if I fully agree with Ariel there, to be honest with you, because the fight between Ciryl Gane and Tom Aspinall seems like it's going to be quite big, especially because you can tell, Tom is pissed. He's pissed off about the eye pokes, and he wants to get his lick back, basically, from Ciryl Gane. And I think he will. But he did respond to the announcement of the fight and said, basically, I'll just fight the winner. And then hopefully, if the winner is, for example, Alex Pereira, I'll fight him first and then fight Ciryl Gane after, something like that. So it's kind of funny because I think about it now, though, if, let's say hypothetically, Ciryl Gane loses the fight and then he goes ahead and doesn't fight someone else, but he goes ahead and he has another title fight opportunity, it doesn't make any sense. So you'd have to fight someone, I think, ideally in between to then get the title fight and win that fight, obviously, to actually have the opportunity, again, to fight for the title. But this heavyweight division is so weird that I think what might actually happen is they might actually do that. They might actually have him fight Alex Pereira, Tom Aspinall meaning, fight Alex Pereira if he wins, and then still do Ciryl Gane afterwards. Because they did that similar shit to Diego Lopez, basically gave him a fight with Gene Silva, and then gave Diego Lopez a fight a year later, basically with the same opponent, Alex Volkanovski. And he had a very similar performance in that second fight. if not worse, to be honest with you. So, okay, let's hear what else Ariel has to say.
MMA. So this is, other than Jon Jones coming back, actually good news for Tom Aspinall, in my opinion. Because you're either getting a Ciryl Gane who's now coming off a win over Alex Pereira, or you're getting an Alex Pereira who's coming off a win over Ciryl Gane with another belt by his side.
And the other thing, too, is he's quite right. Because theoretically, what if Jon Jones wins the heavyweight interim title again? He's not going to go fight Tom Aspinall. He's already said that Tom Aspinall is a very annoying person. I don't think he's going to fight Tom Aspinall again. So then you have another conundrum where you're like, you don't know who to, like, now you have to give, then you'd have to basically do another interim heavyweight title fight between Alex Pereira and Ciryl Gane. At least this year, we're going to get it. Tom Aspinall is going to go ahead and have that fight with the winner of that fight afterwards once he gets his whole clearance from the doctors and stuff like that. By the way, I saw some of you commenting down below and stuff like that. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the likes. Don't forget to subscribe, by the way, just real quick. Don't forget to subscribe. I've seen a lot of you subscribing quite recently, and my views have just gone out the roof recently. So I genuinely appreciate all the love. But just keep coming back, and we're going to get into this a little bit more. Now, with that being said, a lot of people, I think, are counting out Ciryl Gane versus Alex Pereira. I think Alex Pereira and Ciryl Gane going up against each other, I think basically two kickboxers, if I'm being honest with you. I think the two kickboxers are going to be a fascinating fight to watch. And I think Ciryl Gane might be too fast on his feet, but we never know. Because, arguably, Alex Pereira was at middleweight, then at light heavyweight, and now going up to heavyweight. So he might actually be quicker than Ciryl Gane, but I don't think so. And I'm just fascinated to see what that fight is. To me, that's at the moment, and I want to see what Colin says and Mo says, but for me at the moment, that's a very 50-50 fight. It's a very intriguing fight. I'm not going to fucking lie. I love that fight. I think it's a great fight. I just don't like Ciryl Gane doing the eye pokes and cheating and then winning that way. I mean, he even did the same thing, or not same thing, but he always, if you watch all his wins in the UFC, most of them come off of a foul. And then who was it? Dos Anjos? JDS, who he basically had, if I'm not mistaken, JDS, he had the fight with him. And then with JDS, he freaking hit him on the back of the head and then gets a knockout immediately after. So thing is, Ciryl Gane does use fouls because they're effective. Who could blame him?
So I'd say this is good news for Tom, who's searching for big fights, big moments, things to get him excited. Once they couldn't come to terms with Jon Jones, and again, they 100% negotiated, they were just very far apart, they decided that they were going to go with Alex Pereira versus Ciryl Gane. And there was a time where that was the main event. There was a time where that was the main event for the White House card.
Okay, I'm being completely straightforward. When I saw the White House card, fight card announced, the reason why I was underwhelmed, now I'm looking at it, I'm excited. But the reason why I was originally underwhelmed is because I thought they were going to do more Americans. I thought they were going to do American maybe versus American, for example, Sean O'Malley versus Corey Sandhagen, who's, who I think they should be fighting each other. But having Jon Jones at the top against Alex Pereira or Ciryl Gane arguably would be well, not Ciryl Gane, but Alex Pereira, that would have been a cool fight to have at the top of the card. Now, luckily, you have, Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje at the top of the card. So that makes more sense to me now because it's an American. And hopefully, I think a lot of people are counting out Justin Gaethje, but I don't think Justin Gaethje's a slouch at all. I think Justin Gaethje has the opportunity to win this fight, but it doesn't mean he will win the fight. And I don't know. It's a really, really interesting matchup because most people are just counting Justin Gaethje out. And it's funny because every time people are counting Justin Gaethje out or counting out people, I think they're missing something. But the issue is with Ilia Topuria, he just has such a great ground game. I mean, look at this past weekend, what we saw with him against Charles Oliveira against Max Holloway. When Charles Oliveira took Ilia Topuria down to the ground, he basically won every single exchange before it actually happened. He was defending every single exchange right before it happened. And that's how Ilia Topuria was able to get out of it. And in fact, once he got up, he just basically got up and just stood up. It was weird. Which is why I also think Charles Oliveira does want a rematch with Ilia Topuria because then you see in the first round with Max Holloway, his first takedown, the way he took him down, he picked him up and just like basically put him down, kind of like similar to Islam Makhachev. I think that's what he wants to do to Ilia Topuria. I think that's how he thinks he's going to take him down. Now, Ilia Topuria is shorter than him, so I don't know if that's going to work or not. And Ilia Topuria is just magnificent in terms of his fighting potential. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But I'm digressing. Sorry. Let's go back into Ariel Helwani's messages here.
They were hoping to have multiple title fights on this card. Never the 7, 8, 9, whatever the hell Donald Trump said and they alluded to. That was never the case. 2, 3 max. There was a hope that Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes would be on there. But obviously, Kayla Harrison is coming off of neck surgery not that long ago, January to June, 5 months. It became clear later in this process that it's just not going to happen. And that's not something that you come back from quickly. It's a huge.
That is, honestly, I think UFC 300, they did 3 title fights. They did the BMF title, then they had the Alex Poton versus Jamal Hill, and then they had the women's fight as well. I think it was Zhang Weili versus someone else. I don't remember exactly who it was, but they had 3 title fights on that UFC 300. So the way this was propped up to be, the White House is going to be incredible. It's going to be better than the Spear. It's going to top that. It's going to top UFC 300. All this is like stuff that Dana and like the UFC were saying. I was just expecting so much more. I mean, to be honest with you, Sean O'Malley versus Ayman Zahabi, it's a good matchup, but it's kind of a weird matchup because Ayman Zahabi doesn't really have a name. Kyle Dawkins versus Bo Nickel. Kyle Dawkins doesn't really have a name. He has 2 fights and 2 knockouts since he rejoined the organization, which is actually pretty cool. But at the same time, he doesn't really have that much of a name. And then you have, obviously, Mauricio Rufy versus, like, Michael Chandler. And we all thought that Michael Chandler was going to obviously fight Conor McGregor. Then you have Conor McGregor coming out with that interview recently saying, essentially, it doesn't make sense for the UFC to put me on the White House. And I get it. He goes, basically, it doesn't make sense for the UFC to put me on the White House just because. I just realized it looks like Aaron wants to kiss me right now. He said just because, like, it doesn't make sense because they're going to sell out the White House anyways. And I think this is going to be one of the most, like, top UFC viewed events in the history of the UFC because it's a one-off, one and done type of situation. Obviously, the Spear they can go back to. I don't think they're going to be able to go back to the White House. So this is a very, very interesting fight. But I do think, to be completely transparent, I do think they could add one more title fight to that UFC White House fight card. And I think it would look better because the fight card, I think, coming up next, which is like the Yuri Prochazka versus Carlos Alberg, that fight card is stacked with good names. Now, obviously, UFC 300 wasn't as great as everyone thought it would be when you watched the actual fights that night. Unfortunately, they had Aljamain Sterling there, and he just stunk it up even worse. But at the same time, it was really exciting to just be a fan and like know that fight card is going to be happening. Okay, let's go back into what Ariel's saying. Sorry.
Bummer. I feel for her. I know that that's what she wanted more than so much. I mean, she's at dinner with them. She's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. It would have been incredible to cap off her career with that. But unfortunately, the man upstairs had other plans, and you just can't risk fighting, especially someone like Amanda Nunes, but anyone with a surgically repaired neck that is not fully healed. So that became a moot point. So we need.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick. Just Amanda Nunes versus like Kayla Harrison, I think would have been a sick fight to have on the White House card. And Kayla, I think, is really good at like just talking and just hyping things up in general. And she was saying some really cool stuff against Amanda Nunes right before the fight in January just happened, and then she was able to go on it. But right before that, all the press media that she was doing, it was really incredible. I thought she was pretty entertaining, and the way she was talking about Amanda Nunes, it made you more intrigued about the fight itself. So I was excited to see that fight, to be honest. But yeah.
Needed another title fight for this card. Mid last week, Ilia Topuria gets the call. I had been checking in repeatedly throughout this whole process, basically from the January 24th card up until last week. Are they asking Ilia? Are they asking Ilia? Are they asking Ilia? Are they asking Ilia? Nope, 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 nope. Mid last week, they finally reach out with 2 questions. What are you more interested in? Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev or Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje? What interests you more? And oh, by the way, this one's at 170, this one's at 55. Well, guess what Ilia Topuria said, per my sources? Give me Islam. I'm going up to 170. Okay, good to know. Thank you very much. That was it. So I've seen the reports from Marca, and I want to give a shout out to their reporter who's been writing a lot about this, Arati Prat. I've seen the reports about Ilia and Islam, and they deserve credit for talking about that first. But according to my sources, that fight was never done. The furthest it got was Ilia saying, I'm in. And then them saying, all right, we'll get back to you. As of Friday, there was no fight involving Ilia Topuria on this White House card. None whatsoever. You heard this from Justin Gaethje himself. It only started late Friday night into early Saturday. That's when they really got into it. And they found out late in the week that Islam was not going to be available. Dana.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, I did pause it for a second because I wanted to say something, but I was just saying like and expressing like Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria would have been an incredible fight, like a massively incredible fight. Honestly, I would have been super excited to hear that announced on the when they presented it. Even the way they presented it, in my opinion, they could have done like a little bit more. You know how like they do those when people retire, they do like a little like package video, just honoring them for their retirement. I just think something like that would have been super cool, like a nice promo. But I know it was just the night before, so yeah. I think to be fair, the UFC did want to put like a really good card out there for the White House card, and I think they just weren't able to really make it happen. I think a lot of people probably said, "I want to be on the White House card," and then heard that a lot of people can't be there, so their friends and their family and stuff like that, and then probably decided, I don't want to be on the White House card. So who knows? We're just speculating here, but yeah.
White revealing yesterday that he's dealing with a hand injury. You may recall last week, his manager, Ali Abdelaziz, saying, we've got something big in the works. I do believe he was referring to this. But for whatever reason, they came to the conclusion that he can't fight.
And that's crazy because Ian Garry was like hoping for that fight. Ian Garry was just like, oh, I want to fight. And I know Colin's going to love this, but Ian Garry was just like super excited about having that fight and then said, oh my God, how can he beat a pound for pound? And, say I need more time, blah, 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 blah. But it's just funny because if you think about it, so timeline wise, Ian Garry's tweeting about Islam Makhachev saying I need more time. And then no one knows why Islam Makhachev needs more time, but then all of a sudden you get, Abdelaziz, whatever his name is, saying that basically there's a bigger announcement. So it does make sense what Ariel's saying, but I don't know. I just thought it was interesting.
On June 14th. So once it became clear that he couldn't fight on June 14th, they turned their attention to making the Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje fight. Ilia wanted Islam. Ilia wanted to move up. Truth be told, Ilia Topuria is about that freaking life. He wanted the biggest freaking test possible. He wanted to move up to 170 to fight Islam Makhachev.
Yeah, I think he wanted to be first 3-belt undisputed champion. And it's funny because in the morning, I'm watching and I'm trying to find it right now, to be honest with you, but I'm watching the Anakin Florin podcast while I'm coming home from the gym, trying to get ready and stuff like that for work. And here we have basically, Malki Kawa, who's essentially Ilia's manager, talking about Ilia saying, I want that fight. And, like Jon Jones and this and that, blah, blah, blah. I know you're Jon Jones' manager in the past, X, Y, and Z. But he said, I'm not Jon Jones and I'm going to be the great, like when I'm done, he basically said, I'm going to be the greatest. And it's funny because I think everybody would agree with that. So what I would like to do actually is just shift a little bit over to essentially that chat right there. Let's go and watch that real quick. I think we got enough of the Ariel Helwani stuff. Let's go ahead and watch that from the Anakin Florin podcast. Okay, switch.
but you're known to our audience obviously as a mixed martial arts guy, and it's sort of the tweet heard around the world on X out of you over the weekend. An all-night negotiation where I didn't sleep hasn't happened in a long time. When I tell you this story, you won't believe it. Hashtag FRM. So I think a lot of that story maybe can't be told, but since we
I'll tell it. I don't have a problem. Listen, I won't perjure myself at all. I'm going to tell you guys the truth. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but the reality of it is that it all came together Friday night, like at midnight. I got woken up out of my sleep that this is the fight they wanted to make, and then it was an all night. It was legitimately, I did not sleep after that. I didn't go to sleep till the next night, and it was funny. Hunter didn't go to sleep either because at 11 o'clock my time, Eastern time, right? You want to call it 11:30, something in that range, between 11 and 12 noon, I want to say, right? We agreed to everything, to all the terms on that deal to fight Gaethje. It was just wild how it came about, because for me personally, right? We were told that Ilia was not going to be on the card earlier that week, right? Then we get a call that said, hey, if we can make a fight, you can fight Islam or Gaethje, right? And we actually said, let's take Islam. We'd love to fight Islam, because remember, guys, it's not about picking an opponent because one is harder or easier or scared or not scared. Money's involved, and the bigger the fight, the more money it is. And so we wanted to make the most amount of money, right, that we possibly could. So we were focused on getting an Islam fight. So when you hear Dana say, well, that was never a fight, it was because it was talked about, but there was no agreement to fight anybody. So I want to clarify my last tweet, which was, there's a lot of facts here that people are just, Dana's been pretty much honest. Now, as far as, and then he kind of clarified his Jon Jones comments about, that he was never going to be on the card. I don't know if that's true, because there was a negotiation there also as well, right? It just kind of didn't go anywhere after a while. And then so then Wednesday I got asked, would you guys want to do this or that? And we said, absolutely. They gave us a number. We said, absolutely not. And then we didn't hear anything after that, right? And so to me, there was no fight going on as of Wednesday afternoon. So it was left with me to go talk to Ilia on Thursday, right, in the morning, and figure out yes or no and get back to them, which I didn't do because I was having an ablation. An ablation is a heart procedure, right, to burn some nerves in the heart that cause AFibs. I had an ablation Thursday. So all of Thursday went by, there was no communication. Friday comes, right? I'm recovering now from this ablation. So I'm sleeping Friday afternoon. So Friday night early, I went to bed. I'm thinking we're not on the card. It's just not happening. They haven't called me. They're announcing they're going to announce it by Saturday. So when I say that this shit was crazy, it was like they already said we're going to announce on Saturday the card. And then I get the phone call Saturday. So, okay, so hold on. So now I'm sleeping. Hunter calls me. I don't answer the phone. I'm asleep. My brother blows me up. Literally, it was 11:59 Friday night. Yo, you need to call Hunter. They're trying to do Ilia to do the Ilia fight. And I said, damn, okay. So then I call Hunter, and then from 12 midnight, literally 12 midnight till almost 11 o'clock, 11:30 the next morning, right? It was just nonstop negotiating between, I'm on the phone with Hunter for an hour and change, and then I'm on the phone with Ilia for an hour and change, and then I'm back to phone, on the phone with Hunter for another hour and change, and then back to Ilia and back and forth, and we're just going back and forth. And there was a lot of stuff that got discussed, a lot of different things, and that was kind of what happened in its totality. So Dana's not lying, right? There was no Islam fight. We agreed to fighting Islam if that's what they wanted to do, but the terms and all that was not there. You following what I'm saying? So that no say there was any fight done. He said that none of these guys were supposed to be on the card. I don't know how accurate that is with Bones, because I felt like that was kind of the fight they wanted to make. They couldn't get there, and that then fell apart. So then they moved on to other stuff. Now, one thing I will say though is I do believe when I got that call on Wednesday, they were talking to everybody. So that's why when he says nobody, these guys weren't supposed to be on the card, I believe that, because even the way it was said to me, who do you want to fight? Like, you guys could fight this guy, you guys could fight that guy. The money that was offered was like small in comparison to what we had already said we wanted to fight those guys from before. You get these are conversations that are forever, right? And so whether it was a White House card or International Fight Week or it's next week, it doesn't matter. It was more about getting the numbers. And when the numbers came, it was like, all right, it was more like, if this fight could happen, here's the numbers. Are you guys down for it? And we're like, not at those numbers. So there was no fight. And then
That's funny. Yeah, he talked about basically Jon Jones not really accepting the fight. I mean, I don't know how much they asked for, but obviously, like we heard Ariel Helwani earlier saying that, Jon Jones wanted $30 million. The UFC wanted to basically give him $15 million, which is half of that. And basically, Makhachev was saying here, like, you know, we weren't really happy with that whole offer, basically. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that, especially from Makhachev, who is actually Jon Jones's manager, which is very, very fascinating, and Ilia Topuria's manager.
I had the ablation, and then boom, here we are. And that's why the whole thing is crazy. And then I was up all night, you know what I'm saying, putting that fight together and making sure that that fight got done. And literally at 11:30 at night, I think the final terms were agreed to, because you know how it goes. It's like everybody takes and gives, and it was a lot of back and forth. And that's kind of how that came about.
So what I speculate had actually happened was that they had Islam Makhachev, and they were thinking to do it versus Ilia Topuria on the co-main event. I think what they were trying to do was then do Ilia Topuria versus, obviously Islam Makhachev, and then I think they were trying to do on the main card, Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira, and then have those two fights headline the UFC White House card. Honestly, if that was the case, to be honest, it would be a really good card, because I know I'm kind of contradicting myself, but honestly, having Jon Jones on the White House card just because he's an American would be cool. Apart from his old shenanigans, and I mean, I think he's kind of a weird guy. Like, I've always watched him since 2020, and what I've seen of him during fight week and the press conferences, I just think he's a very fake person, if I'm being honest, like extremely fake person. And I'm not a big fan of fake people, so I just don't really fuck with him, to be honest with you. But yeah, let's see if there's anything else he has to say.
Did you think that worked to your advantage a bit, Malky, for it to kind of come into fruition this late in the game?
Yeah, because
so this is basically about the negotiation. So I think we've seen all that, and we've seen enough of that so far. Just one last thing. So one last thing is that there was basically a fight announced with Francis Ngannou, and it's in MVP. Now, the weird thing is that, like, Stipe Miocic felt disrespected by the UFC. Francis Ngannou had an issue. He leaves the UFC, goes to the PFL. Did one fight there. I don't think Francis Ngannou is really a good person to work with, so not much to say there. I guess I can kind of understand the UFC from that standpoint in some sense, I guess. But obviously, we don't know the inner outer workings of the UFC and negotiations and stuff like that. But from the outside looking in, it just seems that way, that he's not really an easy person to work with. And then you have Jon Jones, who's upset. And now you have Tom Aspinall, who feels like, and I think genuinely Tom Aspinall was not treated right when it came to the eye poke, and basically Dana saying he didn't want to fight, insinuating that he could have fought, but he just decided not to. Find it very, very interesting that he did it that way. And then you have basically, ESPN earlier this morning putting out a press release saying that they have Francis Ngannou debuting on Netflix against God knows who, Philippe Lins, and apparently he had multiple fights canceled in the UFC, and he was a light heavyweight fighter. So yeah, it's just pretty interesting to see. Okay, Lins has completed in the UFC, Bellator, and PFL. Oh, competed in the UFC, Bellator, and PFL. He has last fought as a lightweight in the UFC, as a light heavyweight, in the UFC, winning the. I'm not reading it really well at all. Winning 4 straight fights from 2022 to 2024 before being released by the promotion in March of 2024. He also won 2018 PFL heavyweight tournament, but hasn't competed as a heavyweight in nearly 6 years. So Jesus Christ, Francis Ngannou is going up someone who hasn't even fought as a heavyweight in the past 6 years, which is kind of ironic because I think they're just setting him up for Francis Ngannou to knock him out, basically. But yeah, that's what we have for today. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave your comments down below. Honestly, I think I've been getting a lot of love from everybody recently. I genuinely appreciate it. I just want to say thank you for those of you who have been viewing my channel. And thank you to those of you who've been showing me a lot of love by subscribing, by commenting, liking my videos. I've been getting average about 9-10 likes per video, which is pretty awesome. And I do, put out these like small snippets of content, between these long form videos and stuff like that. But again, just real quick, on Thursday, I'm doing a podcast with Mo. And then that podcast with Mo is going to be in the late evening. So I'm going to put that out probably Thursday evening or Friday morning. And then I'm doing a podcast with Colin to go over, with Colin and Mo actually, to go over all the fights and just the MMA chaos and news and all that stuff. And, again, when Mo messaged me back about the Charles Oliveira fight, he was just super excited about it. He was super happy. Let me just read what he said real quick, because he was really ecstatic about the whole thing. And honestly, I do respect, obviously Charles Oliveira for the way he did it. I do technically think a lot of people are over indulging in this idea that I think they're overindulging in the idea that basically that BMF title should just be a kibosh. They should put a kibosh in that. I don't think they should put a kibosh in that. I think he rightfully got that. Not to mention, it's just kind of sad if you let Charles Oliveira not defend his belt, but you let Max Holloway defend it twice. Then, how does he get his paper? Like, how does he get his championship pay? So he said, bro, that motherfucking straight up lying. Oh wait, he's talking about Jon Jones. Okay, both of them ain't coming back. Oh, he's talking about Jon Jones and Conor McGregor. That was sick ass fight though. I don't care what anyone says. Told you Charles would take it. Yeah, he did. He did on the podcast. He did say that fight. He said that fight was also going to feed generations. That fight is not feeding any generations at all. No one wants to see that fight ever again. But it was a great fight by Charles Oliveira. All right, thank you again. Subscribe. Don't forget to comment down below and leave a like. And we'll see you on the next one.